I think that means everyone's going to be kicked off for just a second. We've got to accept the permissions to come back on. Amazing. Okay, great. We've got Joanna, we've got some people waiting in the lobby. I'll just accept everyone as they come along. So hey everyone, welcome to the Public Policy Design Speaker Series. For those that are new, this is the speaker series element of the UK Civil Service Public Policy Design Community. We are an expert community of practice of the UK policy profession, and we have around 1,000 members in 165 public government organisations, and we specialise in using design and innovation in policymaking. We are a community of practice, so we host various different strands of work to support people doing what they do best, which is design in policy. As part of this, we send out monthly newsletters, host various meetups and working groups. So this particular strand of work is to do with design and innovation, and it's where we bring in thought leaders. So we have Jo today to talk about what they've been up to in the design space. And I will sort of introduce Jo. So today we've got the pleasure of Joanna Choukier joining us today, and Joanna is the Director of Design and Innovation at the RSA, and she's responsible for championing how design and innovation is applied across the RSA community, and the policy and the impact the work is having to transition systems to do more good for people, the places and the planet. So Joanna is a leading life-centric designer with 4 different hats. She's a practitioner, a researcher, a thought leader and an educator. And she has 25 years worth of experience in both the UK and Lebanon. So during the session, Joanna will be reflecting on 25 years of designing for good and the sort of different ways that design has influenced how designers have been shaping society, all the way through from design activism to human-centric design, all the way through to life-centric design. And yeah, I'll hand over to Joanna.
Thank you so much, Zara, and hello everyone. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me, and to Andrew Knight for inviting me to come and talk to you all today. I'm just going to share my screen. I've got some slides, so thank you. And then if you guys can just give me a signal, you can see that. Perfect.
Yeah. Fab. Got it.
Great. Just, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. So as Zara mentioned, I'll be reflecting on 25 years of designing for good, which has really kind of spanned what I would describe as kind of 3 different waves of design that some of you might have crossed or might currently be in. But before I, just checking how I orientate the slides. I might have to bring my mouse here. Hold on, give me a second. There we go. I think I should be able to flick through. Perfect. Okay. But before I dive into my 25 years, I wanted to take you a long way back because I'm very honored to be leading one of the oldest organizations in the world that has encouraged design for good. That's the RSA. And design has been in our DNA throughout all of that history. So for over 270 years, the RSA has been at the forefront of promoting design. We were established on the basis of eliciting designs for the public good. That's actually in our charter. So in the first 100 years, this took the form of the RSA Premiums Awards scheme. That was our first program. It's basically the 18th century version of Kickstarter. So we would work with our members to identify a problem. Then we would encourage and steward design solutions from our members. We now call our members fellows, and then fund and finance the manufacturing and commercialization of these solutions before moving on to the next challenge area. And across that history, the designs we encouraged shifted systems way before the practice of systems design became professionalized or codified. And some of you will be familiar with the design maturity ladder that you can see on that slide, from design as form to design as process, as strategy, and as system. So I'm going to take you through a few examples from our deep RSA history to help bring this point to life. And you'll see that some of these examples actually span across that ladder or might sit in particular parts of the ladder. So Andrew Knight asked me to keep this talk engaging, and I might need to see the chat to do that. So let me try and see if I can. I don't think I can see the chat and share my screen at the same time. So maybe Zara, can I ask for your help?
Yeah, no problem.
I'm going to ask questions. It's basically trivia. So I'm going to ask, I'm going to show you a number of different designs and inventions, and then I'm going to ask people to, we can either use the chat or you can just shout out. It might get a bit chaotic. But what year do you think that invention was invented? Okay, so that's the question. So maybe, Zara, you can just read out some of the things popping out on the chat, but I'll introduce the inventions first. So wood in Britain was the main source of fuel and building material, and the country suffered centuries of deforestation as a result. So the RSA started incentivizing nobility and landowners to plant trees by offering medals to those who planted the most trees each year, honoring them as custodians of the land. And that was the language that was used at the time, custodians of the land. This resulted in the RSA encouraging the planting of 60 million trees over that campaign period. This lovely drawing that you can see on the slide is by Quentin Blake, one of the Royal Designers for Industry, to honour this initiative. So what year do you think was the first medal awarded? Can people take their guesses?
We've got a few guesses in the chat, but if anyone wants to come off and shout their answer out, we've got 1858, 1858, 1858. That's a consecutive sort of number we're seeing.
Okay, let's do a reveal. It's actually 1758, only 4 years after the RSA was founded. So it's kind of very much ahead of its time to kind of really think in a systems thinking way. Think about who holds the power, who owns the land, who has the money to fund the planting of trees. So that was very much targeted at the kind of aristocracy, and using kind of that, kind of association with a medal as a way of incentivizing the ability to invest in that societal initiative. Right, next question. So the RSA set out a challenge for inventors to design a machine that would eliminate the use of little children in sweeping chimneys. So George Smart won the competition with his design of the scandoscope, which today we call the chimney brush. We still use today. If you've got a chimney, you might have called a chimney sweep to come and help you out, and they would have brought a chimney brush, a scandoscope with them. What year do you think George Smart designed the scandoscope? So what's coming up in the chat?
We've got 1802, 1902, 1902 again. Lots of 1902s. Oh, another 1802 from Stevie. Yeah, so we're balancing between the 18s and the 19s.
It was very early in the 1800s, and this is a perfect example of kind of systems shifting design, because the RSA, once the product was kind of designed and won the prize, George Smart won the prize, the RSA funded the manufacturing of chimney brushes at a scale that was large enough to put chimney sweeps out of business. So the chimney sweeps who were hiring children, basically. And then we lobbied for Parliament to ban the use of children. So it was kind of this product innovation that helped shift the market and then ultimately shift policy. Right, another one. In the late 18th century, the RSA organized a competition to design a lifeboat that could effectively rescue people from shipwrecks. This was in response to the high number of maritime accidents along the British coast, and two key figures emerged from this competition. Henry Greathead, a boat builder, is largely credited with building the first purpose-built lifeboat, the original. What year would you say the original won that award? 1702, 1802, 1902.
We've got 1702, 1802. We've got a range this time. All 17s, 18s, and 19s.
I think people are spreading their bets at this point. So it was also in 1802, the same year that the scandoscope was invented. So that was a very busy year with premiums challenges. Moving into the future, a bit further into the future, we founded the Royal Designers for Industry, which is considered the highest accolade for design in the UK. And every year the RSA ratifies up to 7 new royal designers for their contributions to society in order to elevate the value of design for good across society and culture. So some of the designers include Ben Terrett, for example, the designer of gov.uk, that many of you will be familiar with, Quentin Blake, who is an amazing illustrator, and Mona Chalabi more recently, amongst others. What year would you say the RDIs were founded? What's coming up?
We've got a 1926, a 36, a 1916. Again, we're all over the place.
Variety. It was 1936. It was between the two world wars, and at the time design was important because it was seen as a way of improving the quality of life, particularly after the First World War, so making life more comfortable for people, whether that's the design of homes or the design of furniture or kind of commercial goods. Right, so this is a certificate for typewriting, I think. Information technology. So the RSA Examinations Board was a key player in the development of the UK's educational system. We created vocational qualifications. So before that, there was no way to receive formal qualifications for vocational skills. And then eventually that exam board was merged with the University of Cambridge Local Examination Syndicate to form OCR. The R in OCR still stands for the RSA. And now the kind of remit of OCR encompasses a wide range of qualifications and activities such as GCSEs and A levels. What year did the merger happen? Guesses?
Oh, we're waiting for something in the chat. 2008. We've got 1888. 1999. Oh, 1998 seems to be the most popular one.
That is correct. As we move into the present, your guesses are becoming a bit more accurate. But yeah, that's absolutely correct. It was at the turn of this century. Moving on to the Student Design Awards that some of you will be familiar with. So Johnny Ive, who went on to design many Apple products, like the first iMac, iPhone, lots of iThings, and who is now an OpenAI partner, won the RSA Student Design Awards 2 years in a row. This was the oldest design competition in the world, and he used his SDA bursary to travel to San Francisco. I love this story, to visit some of the fast-growing product startups there. That's where he met Steve Jobs, and a few years later, Apple poached him as their designer. What years, because he won 2 years in a row, what years would you say Johnny Ive won the Student Design Awards?
We've got a 1988, 88 to 89. Yeah, that seems to be the most popular one, 88 to 89.
Correct. Great. That's amazing. Thank you. And the last example, I think this one you will get right. So the RSA produced BBC The Fix, which was a radio show that invited 12 brilliant young creatives from around the UK to design solutions to difficult social problems like homelessness, childhood obesity, debt and poverty. What year was the show produced?
We've got a 2007. We've got another 2007, a 2017. 2007 seems to be the most popular. Oh, we've got a 1997 thrown in there.
Surprising. It was 2017, and it was actually co-hosted by Matthew Taylor, who was the RSA CEO at the time, and Kat Drew, who is now the Chief Design Officer at the Design Council. And you can still go and watch the episodes if you're interested. It was 2017. So these were just a few examples. Hope that was fun. I promise no more. Well, there's one more question and then I promise no more trivia for today. So these were just a few examples, but across our history, there were some common patterns for the modes in which we helped initiate systemic change. Can you guess which ones we haven't done as the RSA? And sorry, a combination of arrows and numbers, but if you just put the number in the chat, which ones of these kind of styles of action did we not take?
We're waiting on some answers, but if anyone wants to pop their hand up and sort of shout out an answer, that would be great too. Oh, we've got a none. We've got a number 2.
Mm-hmm.
A 1 and a 7. Someone said you've done them all.
Mm-hmm.
Louise thinks it's number 5.
Mm-hmm.
Stuart thinks all of them. So does Jane.
Okay. Those who are saying all of them are absolutely correct. This was a trick question. We have done all of them. We were actually the first. So in terms of number 2, we hosted the first public arts exhibition in the UK. Before that, all art was exhibited. Well, it was just in private people's homes, really. So the kind of the commoners would not have access to the arts and to artwork and paintings and sculptures in that way. And we have founded many organisations, the Royal Designers of Art, the Royal Designers of Industry, but we've also been involved in shaping the Royal Academy. That was actually a schism, so the RSA and the Royal Academy split into 2 separate organisations. We were involved in the founding of the Design Council. It was called the Council for Industrial Designs at the time. So a number of different organisations. They kind of spun out. They were kind of ideas that we've kind of incubated and then they spun out. But one of the latest, just thinking, I know there's a lot of kind of designers working across government. The latest example that relates actually to kind of shaping governance policy approaches was this piece of work that you might recognise. So this was back in 2020, where Andrea Siodmok, who founded Policy Lab, worked with Matthew Taylor, who was RSA CEO at the time, to shape and test this framework for all the different styles of government action. And it kind of crossed the different hats that government can wear with the different levels of maturity of different kind of policy ideas and inventions. I still find that framework really helpful today. So from the RSA's 270 years, and thank you for all your engagement with the trivia. I'm going to go to my 25 years of designing for good, of which the RSA made up only the last 5. So in the background, this is my gigantic Lebanese family, which includes 3 generations of designers and engineers, and who knows what the grandchildren will do. So it includes fashion designers, interior architects, animation designers, social innovators, film and theatre, electrical and structural engineers, and so on. So there was no escaping my destiny, really. And I wanted to reflect on my own journey growing up as a war child in Lebanon and putting 2 things together. So the first is kind of what I care about, what I grew up caring about. Conflict was a part of my lived experience, so social good, and what I'm good at, what I was talented at, which is design. So across my career, I've really worked at that intersection between these 2 things, design for good. So I'll reflect on the different waves of design that have influenced me. So from design activism in the 2000s to human-centric design in the 2010s to life-centric design, which I strongly believe is the next chapter that we need to see the future through. So one of my earliest inspirations as I was completing my graphic design BA in the early 2000s was this First Things First manifesto, which was written and published in 1964 by Ken Garland. It was backed by over 400 graphic designers and artists at the time. It lashed out against the fast-paced and often trivial productions of mainstream advertising, and its solution was to focus efforts of design on education and public service tasks that promoted the betterment of society. And I was also inspired by a number of public dissent visual campaigns and installations when designers and artists used their skills to protest or demonstrate a different reality, especially around social fragmentation and conflict issues. And if you're interested in some of this history around design activism, I highly recommend Liz McQuiston's Design Activism book. She has multiple series and editions, and it's really, really inspiring and very provocative work. So this whole design activism movement really shaped my PhD research, which I was working on part-time while setting up and growing a human-centric design agency in London. I'll tell you more about that later. So my PhD focused on using design methods and approaches to improve social cohesion in post-conflict communities. So the photo you see in the background is a community of 30 imaginers. I called them imaginers. They are amazingly brilliant, energetic young people in Lebanon, aged 18 to 30, from right across the country. And I brought that community together over the course of the research to co-create and co-produce ideas for social integration in Lebanon. So for some of you who might not know, Lebanon, it's a tiny little country. It's about the size of Yorkshire, but most people spend their entire life in one place and with the same social group. So there's a lot of social fragmentation. The coloured maps that you see represent the geographic mobility of different participants in my research, and the different colours reference the different reasons why they would have visited different places, so whether they live there or study or work. So you could see for the large majority of participants, they spend most of their kind of 18 to 30 years of their life in one particular region, or maybe two at most. And usually it might be because they've got family that they were kind of visiting. And those at the bottom that have kind of a broader spectrum or kind of show more geographic mobility would often have kind of grown up in kind of more secular, kind of maybe Beirut, the capital city, or cosmopolitan parts of the country. So they tend to, and maybe gone to a school that was more mixed, so they tend to be a bit more open to kind of exploring and going to regions where that were kind of inhabited by social groups different to their own. So these are some of the design research methods I used across the research, from kind of light touch to really deep, if you kind of look at 1 to 4. So Explorations Toolkit was kind of really me dipping my toes in the water. So this was a cultural probes toolkit. So it was an envelope with a number of probes that young participants could just do in their own time. There was kind of no researcher bias beyond obviously the design of the tools themselves. So they included things like a disposable camera, voice recorder, asking them to map where they've kind of the places they've been to. So really kind of fun and engaging prompts, but that helped me understand how they were interacting with different social groups through their day-to-day life. The second method is Expressions Corner, the deck of cards that you see. So this was a pop-up unstructured interview. It happened in community centres across the country, about 64 different community centres, all through a gatekeeper, a local trusted community organisation. I was not there. I would dial the participants over Skype. Yes, it was Skype at the time. And so they didn't see my face. They didn't know my name. Well, they knew my name, but I didn't know their name. So I didn't even have to see the consent forms. So they could really kind of do that interview in a fully confidential setup. So they'd go into that pop-up tent and there's this kind of deck of cards in front of them, and they just led this monologue. They could pick any card and just say whatever they wanted about it. There were no questions. So the cards represented different political parties, different religious sects, different regions, and different kind of contentious topics. And then 3 was Imagination Studio. So the Imaginers, we came together. It was a kind of lab, a kind of an imagination lab, really. So over 12 months, 12 workshops, we came together to co-design ideas in response to the barriers that the research identified. And finally, we tested these at Imagination Market, which is a kind of pop-up marketplace in 2 cities over 2 weekends with young people. So what you can see here is the 5 different barriers that the research identified. So 5 different barriers to social cohesion. In Lebanon, we speak 3 different languages, but the nuances and our preference for what dominant language to use says a lot about our social class, our and our religion, I suppose, our sect. So if you kind of meet a stranger on the street, the way they talk, you already start to form biases around who they are and what you think about them just from the way they speak. Media and influence, all media companies are funded by political parties, so it's really hard to access kind of unbiased stories, and it's really hard for kind of political parties not to kind of influence the national debate. Regions and mobility, as I shared with the maps, politics and influence, again, friendships tend to be in the same homogenous political allyships, and then it's really difficult to intermarry. So it's really difficult for people from different sects to marry because there's no civil marriage. You have to convert, you have to go through a religious marriage or marry abroad and come back in and register. So in response to these different challenges, that's the whole point of kind of Imagination Studios, to generate ideas for ways that we could overcome some of these barriers. And these are the 5 ideas that you see at the bottom. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will just talk about love, which was designed in response to the sect and marriage barrier. So this was a fortune-telling service. So one of the Imaginers dressed up as an actual story fortune teller in the imagination market. And the aim of the service was to tackle fear-mongering and educating young people on their rights when it comes to mixed marriage scenarios. So young people would pick 2 cards that represented them and someone they wanted to have a relationship or they were already in a relationship with from a different religious sect, and the fortune teller would read out all of the policies that impacted how they could get married, what the legal process could be, whether they had to convert, what happens in a case of a divorce, custody and inheritance. All of these policies that were absolutely intentionally left hidden and invisible for young people to prevent mixed marriages in order for particular political parties to continue to dominate power. So this is kind of, in a nutshell, a little bit of the impact. I have a lot of impact data, but just wanted to show something visual. So the research identified these 5 segments based on attitudes and behaviors that you can see. So distant, stubborn, skeptical, curious, and open-minded. And as young people entered the imagination market, they were asked to pick the one that best represented them, and we had little definitions. And then as they left the imagination market, they were asked to answer that question again. So you could see really an upwards movement towards the segments that seemed to be more open and curious towards connecting with and getting to know other young people from different social groups. So that was the first wave. As we move into the second wave of human-centric design, just doing quick time checks, so maybe just another 10 minutes, and we could do maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes of questions. Does that sound good, Zara?
That sounds great.
Perfect. So second wave is human-centric design, human-centric design really has roots in industrial and product design, where designing and testing commercial products with real consumers was seen as good practice to improve usability and meet customer needs, and therefore kind of better for business, sell more products. However, there's a political movement that really helped set the conditions for human-centric design to move beyond the commercial and take root within the social sector. And that's my own analysis. So I think others might disagree with that. So I'd say the political movement is New Labour between 1994 and 2010, which focused on public participation as a way to rebuild public trust. So this meant that all public services and policies, anything new you needed to do in the public domain, you needed to consult citizens around it, particularly the citizens that it will affect. And then I think another policy window came under the Conservative government with the introduction of the Social Value Act in 2013, which set the expectation that every government contract needed to deliver social and environmental benefits to its community beyond cost effectiveness. So this was around the same time new bodies were being set up within government to design for human-centric needs, such as the Government Digital Service and Policy Lab soon after. So if you're interested in that wave of design, I can highly recommend this report that you can see up on the screen, the Social Value Futures Report, co-authored by some brilliant people who continue to work in this space, including Lucy Kimball, Guy Junior, etc. You can download it online, it's available in the public domain. So now the photo you see in the background is a small team from Us Create, a design agency I led alongside Mary Cook and Zoe Stanton, and later Kat Drew, Robbie Bates. So it was kind of between 2010 and 2020, and it centered human-centered design, working on hundreds of projects with dozens of public sector organizations. So we're predominantly working with the public sector. And in 2018, we were acquired by FutureGov, which was then acquired by the Panoply Group, becoming TPX Impact. So to bring that wave of design to life, I just wanted to share the last project I led in this area, which was straight after the acquisition, and that's the redesign of digital urgent and emergency care services in England in 2019. So just before the pandemic hit, we released the report with recommendations for reform only, I think, 3 months before lockdown. So to understand the current landscape and propose improvements where digital first urgent and emergency care can deliver better patient outcomes and better cost savings, so that was really kind of the policy remit, we needed to map and research the entire ecosystem. So for some of you who work with the NHS, you understand how complicated this is. So this was nearly 20,000 organizations, from pharmacies to urgent care centers, to ambulance services, to A&Es, and so on. So it's a really huge and complicated system that cost us over 10 billion in funding every year. That was at the time. I don't know how that's changed today. So this involved big research, sizing the market, as you've just seen, and mapping commissioning and delivery pathways, and that was complemented with deep research, spending days and nights in a number of very different urgent and emergency care settings. So it was really interesting for the researchers, speaking to staff and patients about their own experiences. So we mapped this complex system on the biggest tools we could find and the biggest Miro boards I've ever worked on. And through a process of co-design with patients, clinicians, service providers, and policymakers, we're able to identify a number of opportunities to streamline and simplify delivery so that whatever care patients needed, wherever they may be in the country, and however acute their needs were, service providers had the same North Star for what a good patient experience would look like. The recommendations and target state, that's basically as simple, that is the target state. And you can kind of branch out into different levels of care, but that is the kind of end-to-end experience that any patient should have. So these recommendations were delivered, as I said, in the autumn of 2019. And at the time, they were seen as ambitious because they were digital first. So they were, you would basically kind of use 111, or you might use kind of a similar app with if you walk into a care setting. So they were seen as ambitious, but the pandemic created the kind of perfect rupture needed in the system to accelerate innovation and adoption. So today, whenever you call 111 or visit the 111 website, turn up at urgent care centers or A&E, this is still the sort of user experience that you have. And finally, onto the third wave of design, and I'll wrap up there, because it's a very emergent area of work. So this started at the start of me joining the RSA, it's a design worldview, really, that goes beyond human-centric design to recognize that we are nature, that people are nature, that people can't thrive unless the places that we are part of thrive, and that these places can't thrive on a dying planet. So we kind of recognize that the health of people can only exist within the context of healthy places, and healthy places can only exist within the context of a healthy planet. So that kind of nestedness and kind of a design, as a design mindset. So this is kind of a really simple framework. There's kind of more complex versions of that. And this is very much a kind of edit of other brilliant people's work, like Carol Samford, Daniel Christian Wall, and others. So please do check out their work. But I try to kind of really simplify it to get the message across. So when we talk about life-centric design, it's very much about looking at a different paradigm of work. So if you look at our current systems, predominantly they sit at these kind of the bottom levels that you can see here, extracting and sustaining. So doing more harm or trying to kind of do less harm. And ideally, future systems, if they are life-centric, they would be restoring and regenerating. They would be undoing harm and doing more good. And I've tried to use a really simple metaphor from agriculture. So at the extracting stage, you're fertilizing land, crops, so that you can get as much like produce as possible. But over time, that's depleting the health of the soil and your ability to grow food in the future in that soil. Tilling, with tilling, you're kind of tilling again to kind of really make sure that like the next produce is really healthy, but that's releasing carbon and also depleting the quality of your soil. And restoring, you might try and mulch, so you introduce more organic crops on top of your soil to really improve the fertility of the soil. But in regenerating, you don't really have to do very much, because if you diversify the types of plants, you're not just planting whole fields of just corn, you're actually creating a whole thriving ecosystem that includes lots of different types of plants, then you actually don't need to do very much as a farmer. Because you've designed the field to be fully regenerating, and you've kind of designed yourself out of the picture. So I wanted to, as a last example, show a Playful Green Planet, if the technology works. So this is our latest initiative in that space.
Yeah.
Playful Green Planet is a really wonderful new initiative from the RSA, where we can use play.
Sarah, can I just check you guys can hear?
Yeah, we've got the sound and we've got the visual.
As a way to connect people with green spaces. I think once people connect with a natural space and start caring for it, they start looking after nature.
So here in the Maxwell, we work with all parts of the community. A lot of our work is youth work, from 0 years old to teenagers. We have a very experimental garden where we mix in growing vegetables, fruits, but also edible flowers, weeds. We're really keen to get people to understand that there's such a diversity of useful edible plants that they can learn how to grow themselves.
So today we're going to plant some potatoes.
You plant potatoes to get potatoes?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. So these things on the potatoes, they're the eyes of the potato. So when we plant them in the ground, you want the eyes to point up to the sky. Where we're based is quite a deprived area in Dundee. Lots of the young people I work with don't have their own gardens because they live in maybe the multis or tenements. So they use the Maxwell garden as an extension of their own home, and it's their garden pretty much.
So this weekend we have the unveiling of the Toadstool Trail, which is a project that we're doing in partnership with Suzanne Scott and Rodney Mountain.
So we've got our toadstool sculptures, and they're really like our little treasures to then start little discussions about nature and having fun, using your body, using all your senses. So they navigate around with their map. The map is what the kids here helped me create because they were part of the project.
I'm just going to skip through, hopefully just for the last bit, to tell you about what next.
I've been doing my projects for a long time. Maxwell have been doing their project for a long time, and for us to come together and work together with the Playful Green Planet and continue that story with them, it's really exciting.
To the slides. There we go. Let's see if this works. Okay, so just a few key things on Playful Green Planet. I don't know if there is a kind of public reckoning of the scale of the challenge that we're facing in the UK. We are one of the world's worst most nature depleted nations. We are also, and if we look at world indexes, we're one of the least nature-connected nations in the world. 1 in 4, so 25% of our children say they feel low connection to nature. that mostly and acutely affects urban children who do not visit green spaces most days of the week. So 1 in 3 do not visit green spaces most days of the week and don't play in nature on most days. And the access is worst, the gap is worst for those from poorer minoritized backgrounds in cities. But you know, I know that's kind of quite morbid, but the benefits of nature play are incredible for the children's well-being, healthier minds and bodies. There's so many studies around better immune systems, better mental well-being. There were studies that were done during after the pandemic that showed that pandemic children had more allergies and worse immune systems considered to the generation before the pandemic and after the pandemic. Really good for learning. Creative play is child-led play where you kind of interact with the natural world. You dig up the soil and you see the worm and you figure out what you're going to do with the worm and why the worm wiggles in that way. So building curiosity and creativity through nature play cannot be replaced with kind of playground structures and kind of human-made play kind of play tools and mechanisms. Really good for social cohesion, for pride and place, and really good for nature. One of the root causes of environmental breakdown is low environmental stewardship. So the less people connect to nature from a very young age, the more likely they will not care and not know how to care for nature as they grow up. So this is where we are with Playful Green Planet. We're targeting 10 cities where there's a triangulation across data that shows high levels of deprivation, poor outcomes for children and low access to nature. It's really a movement of nature play stewards like Maxwell Community Centre that you just saw in a film. Really amazing community groups doing amazing things in pocket gardens, opening up botanical gardens to the public to do stuff. Every place is really different in the way that they've approached it, but they're all creating nature play spaces at the doorstep of every child in their urban environments. And that's the sort of reach we've had just from 2 pilots in the last 9 months. And that's really kind of our call to action. If we think about nature play not as a privilege, but as a right for the UK's 10 million children, how could that happen for every child for free? So we're not talking about scouts or forest schools that all have like subscriptions that are designed to deliver some of the same benefits, but often for kind of middle class, upper class families every day and near every home. So I felt like it might be helpful to kind of do a bit of a kind of takeaway tool. Like if you are thinking about life-centric design, whether you're designing like a policy or a service or a product or a campaign, that's a framework we developed at the RSA, which just helps you think about particular things and helps you think about that kind of do more good intention or intent for what you're designing. So obviously you're kind of worrying about the finances, like what's the budget, what's the public purse, all of that stuff. How do we save costs? Like maybe that's kind of your brief as a designer. How do I make this more efficient? But at the same time, how can you think about kind of that blue layer? How are you doing more good to the community, to the suppliers, to the staff who are involved in kind of delivering that service or policy? And then what's the impact on the kind of environmental resources, the other stakeholders, the kind of nature stakeholders, like air, biodiversity, water, etc. And my very last slide, I negotiated a discount for you all. So if you do want to become a fellow of the RSA, you can use the design code design26, and that will waive your registration fee. So would love for you to join the community. And if you want to find out more, feel free to reach out. But that's a lot of me talking at you, and I'd love to hear more from you and pick up any questions that you might have. I'll stop sharing, but we'll share the slides and I can share the discount code separately as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Joanna. That was, yeah, really inspirational, especially that sort of ending about how we take control of what we have and contribute more economically and sustainability to everything that's going on. Yeah, thank you so much. We do have a few questions in the chat. I don't know if anyone wants to come off mute and yeah, ask Jo anything they would like.
give people a bit of time to digest.
We've got Becky, go for it.
Hey, yeah, thank you so much. So much of that resonated. I really enjoyed hearing about your experiences and reflections. I had quite a specific question. Work in DEFRA on farming program, and for me, it's like a no-brainer, like what you described. You know, connection to nature results in kind of longer-term stewardship by human population of the environment, and we're kind of looking at the evidence base that exists for that, particularly kind of the role that smaller farms might play in providing spaces for people to connect to nature and kind of like their value within the kind of agricultural sector. So I'm just curious to know if you've got any clues of kind of existing evidence that exists around that. I obviously made a note of the RSA project that you spoke to, but whether through that work you could signpost us to any other areas of research that are kind of working in that space before we potentially do some research ourselves.
Amazing. I mean, Becky, we've just actually, that's really timely because we've just completed an evidence review. So against all these 4 benefits that I shared, we have a suite of kind of research papers that demonstrate that causality between nature play and well-being, nature play and learning, nature play and community health, like community connections, and nature play and environmental stewardship. So I think what I can do is just send you, I'll send you a slide and it includes in its notes all the references for all the research papers. And I would also highly recommend looking at TCPA. They just published a piece of research that shows that across all the different local assets in a place, green spaces mark the highest in terms of pride across people from any political support, like political party, supporting any political party. So it kind of crosses the divides and social class as well. So it's kind of green spaces were kind of the uniting place-based asset for communities. So very happy to follow up. Maybe I can kind of send that. Let me know, Zara, what's the best way. But yeah, very happy to connect with you, Becky.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Joanna.
Not at all.
We've got a few more questions in the chat. One from Stevie. He said, working across politically led programs where motivation for action and impact can sometimes not marry with communities and individuals want to see happen. Motivating yourself can be to push on can sometimes be a challenge. What do you do to help retain and nourish your design activist and life-centric mindset to continue to lead in this space?
That is a very, very good question. I don't think there's an easy answer to that. I feel like I am still kind of, even 25 years later, kind of defining my role as a designer. And I do wonder whether there isn't a kind of utopian single role. I know, like, we always talk about kind of designer as facilitator, designer as connector, designer as kind of creator, initiator. And I think it's about kind of just I wonder if it's kind of just sensing what's right at the time. With a lot of the community-based work, like for example with Playful Green Planet, our role is very much kind of arm's length, and that's really important for the RSA to maintain that role. Across all of the Playful Green Planet initiatives across the country, the only unifying thing is 4 design principles, which I haven't shared, but they're basically open and accessible to every child for free, co-created by and with the local community, and children have to be the creative directors. So that kind of co-creation in place. They need to deliver on these nested benefits, which they do anyway. As soon as you do a nature play, like, it just automatically delivers your benefits. And finally, they need to kind of be resilient, or will support these initiatives to be resilient over time. So not just pop up one-off. It's kind of very much been kind of a stewardship of these 4 principles, but it's been the communities who've been kind of leading. You do need the champions on the ground who are really passionate about it. I've also failed, like, even kind of in a personal project in my own local neighborhood. We tried to set up a community garden, and all the houses overlooking that kind of pocket garden were really strongly against it. And we just didn't end up doing it. And that was okay. Like, it was kind of, they didn't want nuisance. There was this mentality of like, kids out, it's just more noise. And so I think the best advice I can share is just sense where the people you're working with, sense where they are. And you can only push you can only push what moves, I'd say. Like, I think sometimes it's okay to recognize that maybe a project or maybe an idea might be ahead of its time. And you might need to kind of let go a little bit and let go of that ownership. I don't know if that answers your question. It's a really good question, and it's a very hard one.
No, brilliant answer. Thanks, Jo. We've got another question in the chat from Sam, who said, looking at the RSA's life-centric design framework, I'd love to know whether you're connected to other similar movements, such as the donut economics and human learning systems.
Yeah. That's also a really good question. We connect in lots of different ways. We're a convening organisation, so we've Kate Rakeworth was actually I think it was 2021. She delivered our president's lecture and talked about the donut economics framework. So we've kind of try and spotlight and amplify some of that work that's happening outside and beyond the RSA. And we've also connected at a number of roundtables to inform a number of kind of initiatives and strategies that sat outside the RSA. So we kind of really try and collaborate as a number of different kind of movements or initiatives that all have that shared purpose. We tend to do it organically, so there isn't kind of formal partnership or, but we kind of just look at key opportune moments and then we'll try and help each other go further.
Great, thank you. We've got a statement from Lisa, who said, love this, particularly as she's worked on Play Scotland, which involves getting children to play more outside. So that's a great example that you showed previously.
Absolutely. I love some of Play Scotland's research. They have a piece of research where they they ask children to define what play is, and I love the definitions. Like, play is when no one is telling me what to do. I love that.
Yeah, very on brand for a child. We've got another question from Stuart, who's at DFE. He says, I don't directly work on his policy, and there's a link to the National Education Nature Park, but this successful approach to connecting children in nature, and most importantly, is continuing. How is RSA connecting to this, if at all?
Yeah, we are. So Playful Green Planet was born a little bit, I think it's probably like 6 months to a year before the Nature Parks initiatives was launched. And at the time, we were still kind of doing a bit of a landscape review, connecting with a few kind of grassroots kind of fellow-led initiatives like House of Imagination, Forest of Imagination, just looking at kind of where we can add value in this space. And since Nature Parks was launched, we've been working very closely with the National History Museum. So for Playful Green Planet, we use some of the same measurement frameworks around biodiversity. So we use the iNaturalist app, so the kids or the carers in these spaces will use the app to record unique biodiversity species, and that all feeds into the same database that the Natural History Museum and Nature Parks are using to monitor biodiversity changes as a result of children's engagement with these green spaces. And we are actually meeting, I was in a meeting with the team leading on that on Monday last week. We were just looking at kind of now that I think the kind of that's coming, or in 2027, this program will be kind of set for retendering. So they were just looking at kind of what we've learned from Playful Green Planet and that cross-pollination of learning. And we have an inspiration event coming up next, kind of in the next couple of weeks, also to bring in some local authorities, and where we'll both share learnings across the board. Obviously, our reach is tiny compared to Nature Parks. Really incredible to see what the work. I mean, their penetration rate across schools is kind of 1/3 now, only a couple of years in. So they got 7,000 schools on board, 2,000 of which are have received grant funding to set up new nature parks within the school grounds. So we're very well connected around the practice and the learning resources. We recommend their learning resources to our Playful Green Planet stewards. The main difference is kind of the positioning. So Nature Parks is really positioned as a kind of within the school curriculum, and it's kind of more like science, climate education, environmental education, and science. And Playful Green Planet is more nature play and kind of beyond outside the curriculum, although we do get a lot of kind of schools visiting the sites. So it's just kind of a different way to reach the same mission, different routes to reaching a common mission. And yeah, I'm really excited to look at how we can continue to work with them in different ways.
Wow, really interesting to see sort of connections between the different organisations and how collaboration is happening to reach people on the ground. I think that's it for questions, unless anyone else wants to pop anything in the chat or come off mute. I'll give it a minute.
I'm just scanning through the other questions to see.
Oh, we've got Alia, if you want to come off. Or yeah, shout out, go for it. Or maybe if you're unable to come off mute, you can pop your question in the chat. There we go.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, all good.
Thank you. Firstly, I really appreciate your time and energy in hosting this session. It was a great refresher. Just to introduce myself, I'm Alia Ahmed. I am graduate from Manchester Metropolitan University in MA in Design Innovation. So my question is, what would your, I align with entirely what you said and actually inspired by your journey of doing social good, which is quite eminently necessary in this point of time, on all point of times, but especially now. And would you have any thoughts on how can we, what are the, okay, let me take a moment, sorry.
That's okay, yeah, that's okay.
What would your thoughts be as an innovation designer? What are the skills required for in the future? And then just to give perspective, so I'm currently in a crossroads. So I'm graduated and I'm looking to consider which pathway to take.
Okay.
One is either should I freelance but then not have that social enterprises who may be aligning in the right space. I'm considering that. Second is whether I can start my own project. So I was first, how I got to know about design thinking is through a social incubator. When I was in the UAE, I created a startup, a financial literacy startup for Gen Z. So that sort of broadened my perspective on design thinking. And so that's how I pursued now, my current course. And the third, obviously, is, going into an organization like RSC or Policy Labs, which already they have that, they have that, knowledge and they have the experts in the field. So I am in a crossroads on which, pathway to take. And I would love to know, what skills can, match in the future as an innovation designer that I can fill in the gaps. And I also just want to give a shout out to my my professors also here, Dr. J, who really inspired me throughout the course to pursue it. In fact, for the first semester, we even had RSC was, so my project was Forest Schools for Adults. Was with Kew Gardens. I did the project. And in fact, my peer, she was one of the highly recommended participants as well. She did with the Natra care. For skin and how can be confident within our own skins. So yeah, I would love to know your thoughts, and I'm really excited to be here, and I really hope there are more sessions like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alia. So two things very briefly, because I'm also conscious of time, but I'd say I think the first thing to think about is you don't have to make long-term commitments when it comes to your career. Like we're going through the lifelong learning, a lot of career transitions. Most of the time, the jobs we are in today, or the things that we would be doing, we won't be doing for longer than 5 years. So there's a lot of kind of job displacement and jobs and kind of skills transitions that are happening. And that can take a little bit of that pressure off. Like you don't have to decide on a pathway now. That's what I'm going to do for the next 20, 30 years of my life. So just think about what you're interested in doing right now. But also, I think my second advice would be just try lots of different things. If you feel you're at that crossroads where you're not sure, just try. I remember having decision trees for that kind of 25 years, the 3 waves, multiple points. I just had decision trees where it's I'm not sure if I should do a PhD or work on this kind of startup design agency. Actually, what if I try and do both of them at the same time, part-time, and I've done corporate roles and I've quit 3 months in, and so just give it a try. Just try lots of different things, take every opportunity that kind of excites you, and because I think that kind of worrying about that kind of long-term commitment can sometimes be debilitating. So just have a play, I'd say. I hope that's useful.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. I think these have been really great questions. Huge thanks to Jo again. Conscious of time, but yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Jo. It's been brilliant and really inspiring.
Thank you, Zara, for having me. Thank you all.
Take care, everyone. Thanks again. Bye. I will drop you an email, Jo. But yeah, thank you so much again. This has been brilliant.
Discount code, so I'll just pop it in the chat in case.
Okay.
I think it was from Lisa, and she put her hand up just now. But that's basically the discount code. But I'll send you separately, Zara.
Fab.
Thank you,
Amazing.
everyone. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye-bye.